Falches me Seona ha mí a ré theatr go leor me a thuirt chaach é. Ach an dú ha mí seo chaná bhí brin mim héin hé ach a bhí brin in the seo ile. So I welcome to you all. My name is Seona McClintock. I run Theatre Leòr, as we've heard already. But today I'm going to try and draw out from other people rather than talk about my about Theatre Leòr's work. And actually, we've got a really lovely, intimate group, and so I'll start off asking the panel some questions. But please don't wait for we will open it up. But if you have a question at any point, give me a wave, a question or a contribution, or maybe we'll throw some questions back this way as well, because I think there's really rich ground to explore when we're talking about intangible cultural heritage, about tradition, about dance, and about those things in. Come in, say, just grab a chair. We're just having a bit of a conversation. Sorry, I'll start with if the three panelists we have here. Can I ask you just to give us a little rundown, a little summary of you and your work, and then maybe how it relates to intangible cultural heritage or tradition or any of those sorts of spaces. Shall I pass this mic? Oh. I can start with you though, Evie, and give you this one.
Okay, hello. My name's Evie. I'm a traditional musician and a contemporary dancer and a little bit of a step dancer. I guess intangible cultural heritage is relevant to me because I've kind of had a lifetime of feeling like my languages are separate from my identity, and so until very recently, so I went to Gaelic medium education, but my parents don't speak at home, sort of thing. I studied contemporary dance, and that felt very separate from the step dance interest. I'm also deaf in one ear, so there's sort of the two worlds sort of thing there. And yeah, I studied being a Gaelic singer, and some of those themes don't feel that relevant to the lifestyle of today. Yeah.
There's so many questions there, so we're going to come back to some of that, but I'll pass to you guys. Do you want Jen and Rob? Jen.
Hi, I'm Jen. I'm the Artistic Director of Slange Dancer, which is now based in the Cartagowry in Perthshire. And probably, I grew up with the traditional arts as a child, but as things changed, I ended up going to study contemporary dance many moons ago, and got into that kind of world and produced work through that realm. And later, kind of as I was actually getting into the Spanish intangible heritage arts, flamenco culture and Andalusian culture, I recognised that I had become far removed from my own and quite displaced from it. And because I was living away, I hadn't had those influences, and I realised how important that was to bring them back into my world to feel complete. So I took a sidestep, I suppose, and whilst I was working with flamenco culture within contemporary dance, I started to integrate my own culture, which has part Gaelic in it, but not where I grew up since I was a child. So a lot of the work I've been doing is about integrating Gaelic culture into my work alongside other cultures as well. So the influences, I would say, would be Scottish, Irish, Cape Breton and Spanish, and sometimes Argentinian and sometimes Ghanaian. So it just depends, and Qatar. So there's been a whole range of things that have kind of led me to where I am now. And at the moment, just about to make 2 pieces of work that incorporate the 4 that I said at the beginning. And that seems to be where my work's heading. There's a lot of learning still to do. And whilst it's dance, it's also interdisciplinary. So yeah, I have too many interests to talk about in a short space of time. So
we'll get through as many as we can.
Karaoke, once you give me the mic, I'll pass it back.
Hi, my name is Rob, or Robord. My work and my life, I suppose, connect in terms of the autobiography of my work. My work is about myself and my upbringing, the languages I speak, the childhood I had. I grew up in a very rural family steeped in traditional arts. We were the postcard of, we sang and we danced and we played instruments in the living room. Grew up at that, and then I was a member of the National Folk Theatre of Ireland for quite a while, and I did that alongside studying languages and cultural studies at university. Lived in Spain as well, in Catalonia, and eventually found my way to Scotland. It was with the National Folk Theatre of Ireland. They started bringing in contemporary choreographers, and I was like, oh, I kind of like the weirdness of this. What is this? You're rolling on the floor with your Irish dancing shoes on. What's going on here? And found my way into 2 worlds, and just now, just in terms of the people in the room and where I am at life, so I find my life is intersecting quite a lot now with working quite a lot in Ireland, being Irish, living in Scotland, working in Scotland. My son has just started going to Gaelic school, so the Gaelic is now coming in, and he's getting really like cocky with, I'll say something in Irish and he'll be like, "You're saying it wrong, Daddy. This is how he's 6. You're saying it wrong." And I think that's basically, I think that's all bleeding into my work, because I'm finding myself more and more in these circles of being quite comfortable in conversations like these, and like, let's talk about all things Gaelic and Gaelic and Celtic, and where dance sits within that. Yeah, that's me.
So that's a great segue, actually, because I think let's go straight into where does dance sit within it. And also, I'm going to turn a little bit. I'm interested to ask you, Evie, in terms of something that you said was the themes that were coming out in kind of traditional song weren't really speaking to the life of today. Actually, I have about 5 different questions, so let me narrow that down. Let's talk about what are the tensions between kind of tradition, I suppose intangible cultural heritage has maybe some baggage attached to it in terms of kind of history and tradition and taking things along with us. What are the tensions between tradition and life today, and maybe how can we bridge some of those, and maybe dance is part of that?
I'll try and think of something, hopefully relevant.
Tell us more about your feeling about.
Oh, I know. Yeah. Thanks. Plain English. Okay. Yes. Like growing up, I always felt that pressure of, you must respect and cherish culture, and I do agree with it. And all these people sort of, fusing Gaelic with it. I was very anti that, but a bit more open-minded these days. I think you can do these things that needn't be at the expense of cultural heritage. A lot of like young people in the Central Belt, there's lots of new things going on, or not new, but like people are revealing more of their different identities and new in various ways, and that's a good thing to share and process your identities.
Yeah, identity is something that came up for all three of you in that introduction about how your heritage has bled into your identity and maybe some sort of reclaiming of aspects of identity too, like feeling that something that maybe wasn't for you actually is for you. And so I wonder if, can I throw over here and to ask about there are so many things I want to ask about. Well, actually, let me ask you the same sort of thing about what are the tensions between the kind of the more stereotypical historical negative aspects, and how do those find a place in modern society? And Mona sort of alluded at the beginning to, does it need a bit of love? Does it need a bit of a makeover? You know, how do we show people that it's relevant, that it still is very relevant today?
It's actually interesting to have these conversations because it is something that is coming up in my next solo work. I guess from the aspect of dance, it's so interwoven within the Gaelic culture that you can't take it out of it to some extent. I do feel that I've gone through a journey of other people's perceptions of what I'm doing and the constant justification because I haven't grown up in a Gaelic-speaking family, and having gone away and investigated my own heritage and DNA to quite some depth, to be able to go back and say, with respect, I'm doing everything with respect. I really want to know the fundamentals of what I'm dealing with and how I put that forward, and all those things about being kind. However, having to justify the desire to be included, the desire to want to do this when I'm not living in it day to day. So I've gone and researched, and I'm my family heritage is from the Clan MacDonald of Glencoe. My great-grandmother lived in Inverness and Gaelic was beaten out of her at school. So there's lots of family ties historically that it's really horrible to say that, I have had at times to bring up just to feel like I can be part of the thing that makes me feel like home. And I never really knew why it made me feel like home, and to introduce all these things in with deep fundamental knowledge and learning, which is difficult to find. And this is what we were saying, where I live in Perthshire, it's really difficult to access that. So a lot of the time I go off to Cape Breton and Mabu in Cape Breton, and that's been very rich for me. But I think however it's put forward, as long as it's considered and thought and cared about and preserved to a certain extent, doesn't mean to say that you can't put it forward in a different way, as long as you're calling out what it is that you're doing, as long as it's, it's said, it's spoken about. And I think that seems to be a bit more accepted.
Deep breath. Tension. So I think I'm going to swap the word tension for porousness. Yeah. And of course it did. I think the tension is where people are no longer asking for permission. I think a lot of contemporary artists are no longer looking for permission to explore their intangible cultural heritage or just their heritage in general. And I think we're living in a world now where that exploration is taken on a much more personal level upon the individual and the experience. And I think that almost goes against the grain of the establishment. And again, I can point back to, like, I'm a gay man. I grew up in a very conservative traditional arts where the boy danced with the girl, and now my work is very much about, being the boy who wanted to dance with the boy. And that was never, ever an option for me. And now it is. And I'm 43 and, I'm reliving my time as a 16-year-old, as a 43-year-old man. And it's here, it's in the space. And I'm exploring Irish language love songs sung from a man to a man as opposed to a man to a woman, which has always been the case. You know, I remember standing amongst loads of people, you know, singing full throttle, you know, oh, isn't she lovely? Isn't she the girl with the beautiful eyes? And I'm like, oh, isn't he lovely? Isn't he the boy with the lovely eyes? You know, and that's, you know, that's been really restricted. And I think I'm enjoying the fact that we no longer have to seek permission to do that. And I like how that is slowly changing. And I like how Irish language arts are I suppose I do feel embraced. And I do feel like people are coming to interact with me because they are cute. What did I just knock? People are curious about what it is to explore language and culture through contemporary dance performance. I also enjoy the tension of dance not being language based, and again, I think that goes I think that still catches people off guard. That you might do like Irish language arts or Gaelic arts through dance, and they look at you as if you said something even worse than contemporary dance. God, you know, it is the new monster in the room that you should be exploring minority language and culture and traditional arts with a contemporary dance background, and they look at you as if you're backward. You're like what? Like, I don't understand. You know, I cannot compute. And then I love the irony of this, because we were talking about this during the week. I was chatting with Ronan as well about like directional language in Irish and Gaelic, about, you know, how we say, you know, we use direction differently, grammatically differently, and, you know, that very simple act of bringing it into a dance environment where people would speak English and use English directional language, you know, go here, go there, as opposed to come from here and come from there, you know, and people go, that's a whole new way of moving. And you go, yeah, right. We have a whole new palette. We have a whole new template here to work with. And yeah, and I think, yeah, so the tension or the porousness about actually, I think contemporary dance is often a really great avenue because it's so open and so accepting for new things. It's kind of, you know, the way we start off with everything. Whereas, you know, I remember with traditional dance, it's like, this is the step, you will learn the step, you will not deviate from the step, this is your regional style. God forbid if I catch you dancing a Connemara step. Just don't do it, you know it. And so there's always been that rigidity, and I really like how I don't feel like we're at that point anymore where we're seeking permission to interrogate and change the art form. I think we're full on in it just now. Yeah.
Great. I really like that. Thank you for changing the word to porousness. This relationship between kind of past and present. In the last symposium in Galway, we ended up talking about it in terms of the ancestors and this relationship between kind of past generations, us, but also future generations. But I actually want to drill down a little bit into the idea of language, right? And how, you know, you can be exploring language, or language can be affecting dance or art forms without it being explicit. And actually, you have a really interesting perspective on this, Evie, because you use both Gaelic and BSL, and I think both of them, it's fair to say, impact on the way that you perform. So could you tell us a bit more about how those languages affect your art?
I guess people say that like language evolved because our thoughts and feelings were just too big and hard to express, and that's the same with BSL. Like it helps me communicate with more ease and flow and agency and control, and the same with dance.
Do you think the fact that you're drawn to BSL as a visual language, a visual way of expressing yourself, is that related to the fact you're a dancer?
Yes, probably yes. I mean, I just learned sign language because I felt like it would help me and I need it. But what I find interesting about dance is less about the meaning for me, so maybe that's more escapism, and then with the sign songs that I do, that's more about the meaning. But yeah, I'm sort of trying to merge the two in a strange way, where it doesn't always have to have a meaning and make meaning, because I get tired of finding meaning or trying to understand things. I struggle to understand things as a whole. So yeah.
That's super interesting. Also, I think because maybe that's a thing that dance always has. It's like, do you have to understand it? Does it have to have a meaning that you then understand? So there's like a spectrum there, a flow between imparting meaning, like language, I suppose, often does, and the art form. That's really interesting. So I want to also come back a little bit to the idea of, I think you both spoke about it in different ways. Permission. Rob says you don't need to ask permission anymore, and you said that you felt like you had to justify your involvement in Gaelic culture with, your DNA results, basically. Which to me, and I understand it. I think a lot of people have that experience, but I wonder, what does that do to who we're including in our...
Can I use the C word? Colonialism.
Yeah, go for it.
Oh no, you didn't. No, but I think I think that's it. I think I had this really interesting conversation with a native Irish speaker, born and bred, and they're going on about why do people think they need permission to talk to me in the language that I was reared in? And and it's amazing how I think the whole colonialism, the whole trauma, the whole idea of escapism, as Evie was saying, about like how people, I think they romanticize, or they give status to ability within language and language capability, fluentness, native speaker, learned speaker. And I think dance disempowers that attitude. I think dance disempowers the status of cultural ownership to these things that said to me many years ago. So it's like nobody chooses the family they're born into. Nobody chooses whether you're born into an English speaking family or an Irish or a Gaelic speaking family. That doesn't mean you're not entitled to it. A really interesting artist back home, Kieran Ye, she talked about how the syntax of the Irish language flows through the Anglo-Irish culture, how people who are English speakers in Ireland still use grammatic structures that come from the Irish language, and our accents are informed by the Irish language, and that how you might not be speaking the words, but you're using the language through your grammar and your cultural heritage and your actions and the way you think, because of the culture you're raised in. And I think that's where there is a full embracing in Ireland, certainly, of learned speakers now, because it's become this thing of reclaiming, but it hasn't come through learning the language as such. It's actually come from like all the different art forms that come through and around the language, and embracing it that way. And again, I think dance disempowers that really negative attitude of having to get it right, or having to need permission to interact with the language, because you can do your Irish language song, but it doesn't need to be seanos. You don't need to go to the Connemara and learn, work with a full seanos maestro to appreciate the songs and be able to sing in the Irish language. And I think that can be replicated through different other different art forms. And I think dance takes away the need for permission. I think it opens doors to other ways to interact with cultural heritage. Yeah. You were worried about me?
Give me 10 minutes.
I was just going to go on from something you said. It was something along the lines of, it's interesting how people like to comment or provide opinion, and such as you're discussing a new piece of work, or how you might approach going into a piece of work or a learning zone. But actually, I have found that when the work is then on stage, nobody said anything bad about it. In fact, it's been welcomed, it's been enjoyed, and it's actually brought up a lot of questions and a lot of discussions that are then beneficial to just talk about all those kinds of things. And yeah, I'm sorry, I've maybe deviated from the question.
Deviate away.
What was the question?
I don't think I even remember anymore. We'll keep chatting, but I want to. Does anyone have any kind of questions or comments that they want to throw in? Really interested in. We have other perspectives in the room, and I'd be interested also in kind of what tradition means to others, and that relationship between tradition or heritage and now. Yeah, LJ. Do you want?
Yeah, I can do. I'll run. Do the mic.
Oh, it's been recorded. It was just making me think a little bit about ownership. You know, when you were talking about having to sort of defend your decisions in terms of Gaelic arts and so on. And just from my own perspective, which is my children are in Gaelic medium, but it came from the fact that my grandmother was Gaelic speaking and came from full Gaelic speaking family, and then there was a split generation thing where they would speak Gaelic if they were over a certain age, but all the children, they didn't want them to have it. So I find that so interesting. So my parents, or my mum, had none, apart from the fact that she would have bits and pieces that she would hear the older generation speak. So the process of going and learning Gaelic for a couple of years, my Gaelic is not good. My conversational Gaelic is not good, but getting the opportunity to learn the language, which I was sort of doing for my children before Gaelic medium, I did have lots of questions, like fish out of water kind of thing. And what I began to realise when I was learning is because language is so related to landscape, it really is yours. You know, it's your landscape. So it really can be yours. So I suppose I was kind of interested in that kind of triangle between language, landscape, and the body.
Language, landscape, and the body. Go.
I find that very interesting as well, and part of my MA was on such like that and ecology as well, social ecologies, and because landscapes across Andalusia, landscapes across Scotland and their islands, the deprivation, the social histories and such like that, I think it all kind of comes into things. And physically, they're completely different, but they have similarities in terms of the dance in their traditional arts. How you then use the body to unite them, change them, evolve them, you could say, is a process of constant investigation. But one of the things is about the geographical boundaries of being able to access those things. And so where you take your body to a landscape, where you take your body to participate or gain information from, I think is also a really interesting point. But yeah, physical bodily mechanics and how you execute various different movements can quickly go from one thing to another, and it's the bit in between that's actually the most difficult bit, but it's valuable and it's there and it's enjoyable. So
yeah, but just really quickly, but I think that's also because it's all autobiographical. Your landscape is your own. It's your daily life, your daily interpretation. I think that always goes back to, I don't think there's enough autobiographical work in this sector. I think culturally, certainly in Ireland, everything was by rote. You learned something, you repeated it, and that was done en masse. It was done in like the dance houses and the dance halls, and there were such restrictions around language and culture that the small bit that you had everybody did it, when actually now we're in the opposite. We think autobiography is the way forward for everyone.
Thank you. Yeah, I thought that was a great question from LJ, and it just got me thinking about clearance. Some of our projects coming up next week are to do with clearance, and what happens when you take the body off the land? What happens when you're in the city? What happens when you're still trying to repair that colonial past of being taken away from the land? And then it got me thinking on just various bits of research about old dances. And the Gaelic speakers in the room can correct me, but as far as I can think, things like Cailleach Conduta and some of the other old traditional dances, they're sort of pre-clearance. So there are some old, and then the dance that we have now out with the very militarised, I'm talking for myself because I was a Highland dancer, which is, there's another funny story with that, I'll talk about it later. Highland dance, or the reintroduction of step dance, which is much more authentic for us. But does it actually tell the story of removing the body from the land? And I wonder, there's a big gap of a practice there. And maybe we have to do that before we can move forward. Don't know.
Did you have a response to what Rob said?
Might be too off topic now, I don't know. This is my first time on a panel, I'm not a talker. Okay. Yeah, I guess we're talking about the body and the language, and I guess this is a bit of a self-indulgent answer, but I've been enjoying, yeah, I'm interested in step dance now as more of a percussive form, and how that echoes like the Gaelic rhythms, and how that connects up through the body, like from your feet to your mouth, from your mouth to your feet, and just, yeah, using, yeah, I've got a very easy instrument to carry around. It's just my body, so like my hands and my feet, and yeah, where was I going with that? Oh, maybe I could link it to Gaelic, and you go, there's singing competitions like the Mod, and it's all very rules and restrictive, and your hands by your side, sort of thing. So it's just, yeah, exciting to break away from that. And step dancing is also exciting when it's not just seen as an add-on. Same as like singers, you just bring them in last minute. It'd just be great if they were more at the forefront, like from the offset. Yeah, that was definitely off topic, wasn't it?
No, it wasn't. It was multi-topic, really interesting. And also, something you picked up on there that I think is really interesting is there isn't one tradition, right? Because in some sense, the mod is traditional, but it's a version that has been kind of protected or preserved in a certain way, and actually it is, it is also predated by other parts of tradition. And there's an academic at the Gaelic College in Skye, Solmarostic, Dáil Liam Stewart, and he talks about tradition. He says he discourages his students from using the word tradition because it creates this idea of a fixed past, whereas actually everything we now think of as tradition was once pop culture, was once, the contemporary culture of the day. And it's a much more porous thing, and I loved his way of defining and talking about that when we're thinking about tradition and how it talks today.
Well, it's that thing of someday Instagram will be in an archive. Yeah. Instagram will be folklore.
Why?
The use of the hashtag will be intangible cultural heritage.
It might be already
300 years time. It's mad how it's circular. It is. It's like, who was Lady Gaga back in like 1462? Out in one of the Outer Hebrides gathering turf.
Yeah. So I love that idea of they're in conversation. But then, kind of picking on from that, and this is for everyone, this isn't just for our panel, at what point, or is there a point where actually there's a responsibility or a duty to protect and preserve, or are we always in conversation and fluid and happy for things to change? Okay, I'll go Kristen first, and then Bernie.
The great man once said that no tradition is stagnant. Rob Heaslip. And to carrying it on, so I grew up in the step dancing world. I was told what to do, how to do, when to do it. This didn't have to work, this did. That was many years ago, and finally, through my own stubbornness and determination, said, why? Did an MA in contemporary performance, all this questioning, adding in all the different styles of dance that I have. And I feel it's my responsibility now to that next generation, the dancers I use in my work, to, like, I tell them, you have an idea, you have something to say it. Like, if you have an idea or want to try something, try it. And they call me out on it, because I'll sometimes slip back into that hierarchy of like, no, do that again. They're like, nah, Kristen, no. So I think it's my responsibility now to, yes, I can hand on a tradition, I can tell you how I learned something, but then I want to show you how I move with it now, where my body has been and what it knows. So again, it's not stagnant, it's not the same thing, it's ever evolving, but it's always remembering.
Yeah, my body had a response to the question, and it was about flow. And flow can be bound, or it can be free flowing, and actually both are needed. So I was thinking, like, we do need, at least I feel a need, often to have a clear picture of my own history. I want to know things, and whether it's dance history or cultural history, or just being a human of the globe, and what my relations are, internationally. So how we hang out together. So, and that is an experience of both bound and, like sometimes really holding on, sometimes holding on too tight. So actually, like I'm holding my breath and it's gone on too long. And I'm trying to muscle through something, and there's not much, it's very stagnant. Or I can trust to be a bit fragile and sort of like, move anyway without knowing, and find the breath again in the next moment and let the fluids flow.
There's something important for me about the discussions about living traditions, and I can only live as much as I have access to in the places that I can access it, and I do find that it's worth trying something even if you're not getting it right, because otherwise the people who do hold, the people with the really strong background knowledge and history and such, if we don't start sharing that in different forms or another, we're just going to stop talking about it. The information is not going to get passed down and questions aren't going to be asked. So trying to live it in the way that I can is really important to me. It might not be what other people expect or want, but yeah, that trying I think is important, and showing the interest in having some kind of connection in some form or another.
I had it's all made me think of another sort of question, which again is kind of for everyone, which is around, we've touched on it a little bit already, but how can we use each of our autobiographies, our traditions, our connections with our, the history that we know of, and in this room, those could be any, it might be a Scottish heritage or a Gaelic heritage, or it might be something different. In this more kind of multicultural and globalized world, how do we use our own heritage as a way to connect with others and theirs, rather than kind of making it a thing that divides us? Yeah. Yes. I was about to say answers on the back of a postcard, but I said that recently, and actually, I'm going to come to you, Babs. I said that recently, and nobody I was with knew what that meant. So, yeah, there we go. Yes, when you say answers on the back of a postcard, it sort of means we'll talk about it afterwards. Babs.
Thank you. I was just thinking because, like last year, I had the opportunity to be part of GUR, and that was great. And the project that I was developing was really, it was called Phone Gachi, and it was based on the ritual of phoning my mother every Sunday night since I've left the island at the age of 18, you know, and my life has been lived differently in different places, and it's very different from, you know, the life I lived in the island, but it is that connecting thing. And I felt actually it would, if the project would go maybe develop, it could be like, I'm sure people still phone home, maybe younger people don't, they use FaceTime now, but you know, I'm sure right across the globe there are people phoning their mothers on a certain day of the week, potentially. And it's that kind of, I was interested really in exploring the voice and the timbre of it and all of that. And maybe, you know, you could bring dance into that piece as well. We did have movement, actually. We did get a lot of help from Jane, which was fantastic. And it's interesting because, you know, people say, you know, Gaelic, oh yeah, Gaelic, it's the music, isn't it? It's these islands we sing, you know, a collection of poems by Kevin Meitheal, who curated it. And I hadn't really thought about dance being part of Gaelic culture at all. So that's my little confession here. But do you know, over the years I've got to think, I move and I have a job that's a physical one, and I feel that dance is the short circuiting to actually the emotion and everything, and it's just such a potential that I don't think we've made use of a lot in Gaelic culture yet. So I'm all ears to hear what you're up to today, and yeah, very excited to hear what you and see what you're doing. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that is exciting. I'm glad, and every day's a school day for all of us. That's why we're here, right? Does anyone else have any questions or comments or thoughts that they want to throw into the circle? Yes.
Sorry. Another 10 minutes. Just as we're speaking about the Gaelic culture, and because I sit in between through out with lots of different cultures, and one of them is the Doric culture and the Bothy culture and the East Coast culture, which doesn't really get the same attention, I suppose. And sort of like just listening to this sort of conversation, it's like there is a place for that as well. You know, it's on the same island, it still exists, and I understand and can often speak Doric quite well. So yeah, I live in a place where I'm not directly in the Doric culture, I'm not directly in the Gaelic culture, but drawn to both. But the attention's different, but it's still part of the intangible heritage arts. It's just dawning on me now. That's all I want to say.
So sorry to go back to the C word, but it is, to my mind, often what is happening is that the minoritized cultures are competing with each other in a detrimental way, where, you know, as opposed to potentially working together. It's, oh, you know, there's enough space for all of us, or actually, if we're going to take away space from anything, maybe it's English, or the dominant culture, whatever that may be.
Can I jump in there? Yeah, I get a bee in my bonnet sometimes in that sphere of things where why is it always a basket full of Irish, Scots Gaelic and Welsh, and why isn't it Irish and Zimbabwean, or is it why isn't it Irish and Bulgarian, and why isn't it Scots and Italian? You know, it's like they're never placed amongst contemporary languages. They're always placed in, and I think it's that static box. It's that thing of like people think and like we try to argue that these languages are contemporary languages, but we never place them alongside modern European languages, you know, or never modern global languages. It's always like, you know, I think it's like in a detrimental way, people look for the tradition to unite us, and but there you go, yeah, there you go, point in case. You know, the idea that, you know, it's I was just like, my partner's Bulgarian, which is why I would I love, like, there's elements of Bulgarian culture that are like very similar to most others, you know, but you the idea that like the piece I had, like Straw Boys, where you dress up in the straw and they have like kukurai, which is like these things where they do these massive costumes and they have like massive cowbells and I live for it. I live for it because it's just so different, you know, to what we normally have, but it's rooted in the same. And I'm always a case of like, why isn't that an exchange? Why isn't someone doing that? Why are we constantly just doing the west coast of Ireland and the west coast of Scotland? What about like the west coast of Serbia or somewhere? You know, like just yeah. But you know what I mean? Like it's that thing. Like, and I think there's an advantage there for like contemporary dance networks for culture on the west, you know, the northwest coast of Europe, to tag on and access that network that takes you to this tiny little dance studio in Vilnius or in Tallinn and be like, yeah, we're going to work on a couple of Gaelic things here. No one in the building has ever heard this language, but hey, here we are. And like, are they ever going to? And is it dance, like the non-verbal art form, that's going to like bring this change, you know, and bring like these cultures together? So yeah, like just internationalism, I think, is often what's missing, and I think contemporary dance can bring that to the table.
I think that might be your next IRIS application then.
Yes, that would be good. And I would like to see, you know, we have like 3 leading Gaelic poets at the moment that work across languages and are fluent in other European languages and put them in the same kind of platform in their work. So we're very lucky that we've got Peter Mackay at the moment, our Macker, Scots Macker. He's fluent in about 2 or 3 languages and Spanish, etc. And he's keen to work, you know, internationally and bring Gaelic into that domain. We've also got Christian McGillivran, Christopher White, who's, you know, his last collection actually is Non Dimenticare gli Angeli, so it's right across, it's just straightforward Gaelic and Italian. And then Niall Gallagher, our Glasgow bard as well, who writes across, I think he's uses I think it's Catalonian, and he uses other languages as well in his work. So it would be a great collaboration to work with poets and dance, I think. Of course, Gillibrige, yeah, exactly. Martin McIntyre, exactly. Thank you, Rona. Yeah, exactly. So we do have a total great swathe of Gaelic writers at the moment across languages.
I wasn't going to chime in so much about the theatre Leòr experience, and we are more, you know, theatre rather than dance, but just in terms of you know, Gaelic culture in an international setting, actually, I often find that international colleagues are more interested in our work than a lot of Scottish colleagues, and so actually and what I put it down to is that multilingual societies that are more used to being multilingual have an inherent understanding or appreciation of multiple languages in a way that monoglot societies just don't. And so actually, yeah, there's a lot of scope, I think, for those international collaborations, but there's often something in the way, you know. Yeah.
Just on that topic of theatre and dance, I think that's an interesting topic in itself, because we separate each other but I use storytelling in my work and song and theatre. I'm working with Pat Canavan on the next solo, and he's a theatre artist. But that
You're
whole
right,
thing
that
of-
was my bad. I should not have built
it's not-
walls.
No, it's not you. It just is, and it's pointing that out. I think the more that we can interact within, maybe there's strict theatre, maybe there's strict dance, but there's a lot going on in the middle, and so.
And that's why we're involved, I suppose, in this residency program, was also that kind of artists working in all mediums and working in Gaelic can traverse these fictional but totally. There's a lot we can share. Are there any final closing thoughts or questions? And if not, I'm gonna just ask a round-up question to the three panelists.
Always evolving.
Yeah, that
Always
was you, wasn't it,
remembering, always
Kristen?
evolving.
Yeah.
I think that was yourself. That was great. I think
That's what we're taking away with us. Great. Well, that is what I want to. I'll ask Rob first, actually, because from the 4 weeks of residency, obviously you guys don't have the benefit of that, but just what is next? What are you looking forward to in this space of intangible cultural heritage?
The new things, the things that can only happen if you put these artists in the room, and how each of their backstories, how each and every one of them have contributed something and not asked permission. How they have been so accepting of one another, regardless of cultural saturation or ownership. And actually, the bit that you bring today is enough. That element of yourself and your culture that you want to bring to this creative process is enough for now. It's enough for today, and it is a valid starting point. And I think they have been. The four of them have been incredibly generous in just going, that's cool, I want to work with that. And that's what I've really enjoyed about it. Hasn't been, there's been no trauma, there's been no chatting about colonialism constantly, because it's always in the room, and I'm enjoying now the fact that we're now in a world where I think often artists are a little bit tired of talking about it, and I accept I brought it up, but it is a thing of it's so nice to be in a studio where we're not dissecting trauma, where we're actually really happy to bring our art form and our culture in and actually celebrate it and not try to repair it, but to actually break it apart and rebuild something new and make it pink and shiny and glittery and animated and we talked about aesthetic, actually a whole new aesthetic, and I'm really excited about the whole new aesthetic that these four have brought to the room today.
Exciting.
No pressure, Vern.
Yeah, so the question, just to wrap up, is obviously Rob's been able to speak about what's happened in these 4 weeks and what he's taking forward, but just in general for you, not necessarily from today, what are you looking forward to, or what is next for you in your thinking? What are you learning about right now?
So I am developing a solo where it is part autobiographical, but through a character that's called Espy, and it is going to allow me the freedom to be my full self on stage and to not be restricted by previous comments or things that I've had before. So rather than just be a dancer or a storyteller, or I'm going to do everything that I know within my craft, and I'm going to put it on stage to reveal all of me in not a nude way, but but it is all about the intangible heritage arts within a contemporary dance context. So it's exciting to have this sense of freedom ahead.
Thank you. Evie, what's coming up next for you, or what are you thinking about based on all these discussions?
Well, yeah, I had to look up intangible cultural heritage. This is new to me, very wordy, yes. So it just means you can't grasp it, and yeah, and just the idea that you can, even if you just get a wee glimpse, and then you kind of make your own understanding of how humans live. What am I up to? I'm going to work on a visual album, so I did a visual EP, and I just love making music videos, and because there I can dance, I can sign, I can sing. It's not all at the same time, so I'm not knackered, and I work with creative subtitles, and just, I don't know, I'm excited to work with artists, dancers, and deaf artists, and musicians, and yeah, just lots of variety. Yeah.
Thank you so much, and thank you for being such a warm and responsive audience as well.